Thanks for joining us here on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for another stakes race preview. Big money up for grabs at Kentucky Downs. So we'll head out there and take a look at race number 6 on Saturday. It is the ladies marathon. David, they just keep getting bigger and bigger purses every year, and they're luring all of the really good turf horses there. In looking at this race, we see a horse that you and I picked last week in one of our previews that got rerouted, and we'll head over here for bigger money in the 7 Nisi Marie. So I mean, when they're putting up $1 million, $2 million, $3.1 million purses, you're just going to see some of the top turf horses head over there.
Yeah, it seems like there's no limit to the money they're going to give away at Kentucky Downs these days. So I can't really blame the connections who want to go for the chance at a big payday in some of these races. As you mentioned, we both had some interest in Nisi Marie in that Flower Bowl last week. Probably not the worst decision to skip that race given the way it played out with no pace signed on. Hopefully there's a little more pace for Nisi Marie in this race. So we'll see how things shape up on the front end as we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector.
That's a perfect little tangent as we move right on into that Timeform US pace projector. So they've got Angel Nashiko up front. Not surprising, forever after all, towards the outside. We have a lot of horses who have shown some of that tactical speed going, these marathon route distances. But you have Angel Nashiko, who's actually stretching out from a little bit shorter. So wouldn't be shocking to see them get a little aggressive. And a lot of times in these distance races, it's like one or two horses that has the intent, that have the plan to go, and then everybody kind of carves in their spot behind. So I'm not exactly sure how I'm expecting this one to play out, but I think pretty fair with at least a couple that I'm expecting to be forwardly placed.
Yeah, Angel Nadeshiko seems like the likely leader in this race. She appears to be a little overmatched on paper. So I would imagine her best chance is to go to the front end, try to slow things down a little bit. You will notice that in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, there's a notation that there's no pace data for the number 1 and the number 4. Those are Three Priests and Greenfinch, both European shippers who we obviously don't have pace data for because they've never raced in North America. I will note for Greenfinch, when you watch some of her races overseas, she does seem like a filly that wants to be prominent early in her races. So I wouldn't be surprised if that number 4 chicklet slides in somewhere between the 3 and the 8 as this race plays out on screen on Saturday.
Yeah, she's a horse who just has most of her resume going shorter also. So just coming out of some of those shorter races might naturally be quicker than some of these. Let's get into the field for the $2 million Kentucky. It's crazy when you look at these purses. The ladies marathon over at Kentucky Downs. This will go as race number 6 on Saturday. David, Three Priests from the inside is a Japanese bred runner who actually comes in from Pontefract, most recently raced on June the 23rd and faced the boys 2 starts back. So you see some races against the boys. I thought that 4th place effort last time out going a mile and a half was fine. Was kind of saving ground down on the inside. Was about 4 lengths off, made a nice move into contention. Just couldn't really quicken with the top few. How do you think that race will stack up against a group like this?
Yeah, interesting pedigree on this horse being by Deep Impact, a Japanese bred, as you said. She's actually the half-sister to Five Towns, who's also by a Japanese sire, a runner that races in this country and has had some success placing in a few stakes. Watching those races overseas, she's a horse that doesn't run that often. She's had a couple long layoffs in her career. She came off another long layoff earlier this year and obviously needed that return race, like you said, against some tougher males competition. Last time out, I thought it was a step in the right direction. Went off at a huge price that day, upwards of 60-1, and actually ran a competitive race going the mile and a half distance. Watching her races, I don't think a slight cutback is going to hurt her at all. I just wonder about her overall quality and finishing ability, and I need a little higher than that 8-1 morning line.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't get a read on her, but I probably wanted a little bit bigger of a price if possible. Let's move to the number 2, Chop Chop, who feels like one of the top contenders in here, David. She was actually the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies beaten favorite back in 2022. And most recently, she's turned more into a turf marathon router here for the ladies. Her last 4 races have all been between a mile and 3/8 and a mile and a half. And she's been pretty sharp. She also has a win at Kentucky Downs previously, which is a positive because it's a unique style course. Some horses love it and other horses don't like it at all. So she's a grade 3 winner and 3 other more recent top 3 finishes in those long distance races. She feels like a pretty good fit in this spot.
Yeah, that Kentucky Downs victory came all the way back, and I think the second start of her career. She actually began her career on the turf as a 2-year-old, and then, like you said, got very good on the dirt at the end of her 2-year-old season, and they kept with that surface for a long time. But she's finally come full circle back to the turf, and she's had success this year, placing in a series of stakes races. I thought she ran a little better than the result might indicate last time in the Glens Falls. That was a race where the pace kind of fell apart. She was in a position to make an early move on the outside, got floated outside. Buccola kind of cut in front of her in the stretch. And she was actually finishing pretty well once she got into the clear in the late stages. Also thought she was in a difficult position two back when she was pressing a pace in a race that was won by the superior warlike goddess. So I like her recent form, and I don't think that the slight cutback to 1.5 miles is going to bother her at all. She seems like a real player in this race.
Yeah, Flavian Pratt, who comes off of that incredible meet at Saratoga where he was winning all of the big stakes races and set a record. So he'd love to win another stakes race on Saturday here with the ladies marathon. Let's move to Angel Nashiko. We expect her to be forwardly placed in here. She won the grade 3 Robert Frankel on the front end, and that was at the end of 2023. She still just on speed figures is going to need to step forward. And in her races this year, she hasn't really done that all that much. Just from a pace standpoint, though, she looks much quicker than most of this field. I'd imagine that's got to be the game plan here.
Yeah, I have trouble warming up to this horse. To me, she looks like a 30-1 shot on paper, and I guess she's got to be half that price or less because she's going out for Safi Joseph, ridden by Irad Ortiz, and that just, basically puts a cap on the price that she can be. But based on her prior form, she's a little tough for me to make in this race.
Completely agree. Green French is the real wild card in here because this is a horse who obviously has some ability, comes in for top-notch connections in Aidan O'Brien. DeTore jumps aboard, but she is a horse whose best races and really the bulk of her work has been shorter. She's only been 1.5 miles one time. That was against top-notch company. And we actually have a replay of her most recent race last time out where I think, this was a situation where they put her on the front end and they've gotten aggressive with her, maybe just feeling like she was best in this race. I'm curious in her. I couldn't get a good read on her. I picked her towards the bottom of the exotics in here, but I know you like her a little bit more, and I'm expecting her to get a little aggressive with DeTore. Is that the trip you're hoping for?
I would hope that she's forwardly placed in this race. She has done it both ways. If you watch her race 2 back in that Naas Oaks trial, she came from towards the back of the pack and almost got there at the end. So she does have some versatility to her, but she seems like, especially going this longer distance on the stretch out, she would be most effective if they could get her a little forward in this race. Frankie DeTore started out riding very well at this Kentucky Downs meet. No surprise with the European style course. He is very familiar with that kind of configuration. And Aidan O'Brien is a trainer that when you go back 5-10 years, it felt like he would just ship anything over to the US. His stats weren't that strong. But if you go in DRF Formulator and restrict his statistics, just the past 2 years, he's been much more intentional with the horse that he ships over. Over the past 2 years, Aidan O'Brien is 8 for 21, 38% with a 292 ROI. Those are Charlie Appleby-like numbers, and he's certainly not getting bet the way that Charlie Appleby does when he ships horses over. I wouldn't be surprised if this horse actually drifts up a little bit from her 3-1 morning line, just because I think she's a little tough to read in this race. When you go back and go through some of her form, especially in that Priori Bell Stakes back in April, she faced some really good horses that day. The winner, a Lilac Rolla, and the third place finisher Buttons came back to finish 2nd and 4th respectively in the Group 1 Irish 1,000 guineas. So I think that she classes up with these, and I'll be interested to see how she fares trying the older runners as a 3-year-old.
I think if they all were to show up with their A game, she may have the most upside of anyone in this field. That's why she's really interesting in here, because she just seems like she has a ceiling higher than the rest of her rivals. Love Reiko is the next one we'll talk about, who's going to go second start back off of a long layoff, was off from October of 2023 to August of 2024. Last year, at the end of the year, she finished 3rd in the Do-Wager, and she ran her best career race based on speed figures when she earned the 94 by her speed figure that day. So you figure now, second start back after the long layoff, she can show some improvement. I still think she's going to need to really, really improve to get the better with a couple of the top runners in here. So while I can expect her to show some improvement with that race under her now, I'm going to need to see it. And I think she is probably deserving to be a long shot in here.
Yeah, I wonder if the mile and 5/16 might actually be a little bit sharp for her because she feels like one that just wants to gallop along and run all day. She made a big early move to win that mile and a half race at Churchill Downs last fall, and she feels like a horse that needs to start her run early because she does not have that turn of foot to get produced late in the stretch. And I almost wonder if Jose Ortiz is not the best fit for her because he is a jockey that likes to hold horses up and make that late burst. And I don't know if that really fits this filly style. So she wasn't for me in this spot.
Vergara, she wants to be forward. She wants to sit close. She's a grade 3 winner, and she's a perfect 2 for 2 in her races at Kentucky. She is just 1 for her last 10, though, overall, as far as getting into the winner circle. So hasn't been winning as much recently, but that last year's race was very good, and something like that would make her very competitive. She just hasn't run as many races as good as that last year's race in her last 5 or 6, but she absolutely seems like one of the horses towards the bottom of exotics, but I got a little excited about a couple others on the win end, David. What do you think about Vergara in here?
Yeah, let's take a look at that ladies marathon from last year. She is the defending champion in this race, and she got a very good trip to win this race back in 2023, up close to a pretty moderate pace, and was just able to spurt away from these late and hold on in the late stages. I think this is a deeper field that she's facing now in 2024. She does have that strong record at Kentucky Downs. She even won at this venue 2 years ago, so she definitely handles this course. I just didn't love that she's been beaten 3 times in a row by Chop Chop, and going back to watch those races, I didn't think she had big excuses. I mean, she was chasing a runoff leader 2 back, and maybe that's not the best place to be from a tactical standpoint, but she still isn't really finishing off those races. And I just wondered if she'd have to improve a little bit to beat this edition of the Ladies Marathon assembled for 2024.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. Just in the same races with Chop Chop, I just thought Chop Chop was a lot better, and I didn't really find as many excuses for Vergara. So I upgraded Chop Chop coming out of those. The number 7, Nisi Marie, was rerouted from the Flower Bowl last week, comes up here for some bigger money. And if you listen to the preview last week, we'll probably say a lot of the same things right here, but she's just a much better horse this year, David, than she was last year. I mean, you could just see it in her speed figures. You could see it since she's shown back up. She's just run 3 of 4 really nice races, much faster against top level company. The one race where she didn't fire was won on the front end by a slow pace where there was no passing at all, and you can just eliminate that race. So this year, her body of work has been really, really good. I think she fits well here. We'll probably get less of a price on her here than we would have last week, but I think she's one of the top contenders, and I can understand why they would come here and run for a little bit bigger money. There are less top horses to be scared of in here than she might have been last week, but you were pointing out that race didn't shape up that well for her. So this probably a blessing in disguise coming here instead.
Yeah, and it certainly does not hurt to get Joel Rosario back aboard for this race because he gave her 2 of the best rides that you could give a horse on the turf back in the Bogey and the New York. Just the poise and patience that he showed before running down those tired speeds at the end of the Bogey, and then 3 back in the New York, making that early backstretch move up the inside to get her into contending position and finding a clear path in the stretch. But beyond the good trips, she ran really well in that New York behind Didia, actually finishing ahead of Warlike Goddess that day. I think that proves that Nisi Marie's ceiling is pretty high. And as you said, didn't get the right setups or trips the last couple of times. She can handle this distance. I think she's a major player in this race.
A horse who I think could possibly outrun her odds in here, David, is the number 8, Forever After All. She's grade 1 placed. Her form since coming into the Walsh barn has been very, very good and improved a little bit. And while she doesn't have some of the overwhelming speed figures that her rivals in this race have, once you start to go through the company that she's faced, she may be a little bit better than those speed figures. She lost to a horse named Full Count Felicia last time out, who was a lone speed winner. 2 starts back, she was behind a horse named Walkathon. Well, we just saw Walkathon come over to Kentucky Downs and earn a 100 buyer speed figure, winning the grade 3's ladies turf for the 3rd consecutive win for Walkathon. Prior to that, she faced a horse named Anisette, wasn't too far behind her. Anisette is a multiple grade 1 winner. Even when she raced against Top Chop on the Turfway Synthetic, she was not far behind Chop Chop that day. So I think when you go race by race of her recent form, I'm not sure if she is quite good enough to win and maybe beat 3 or 4 of the top contenders in here at the same time. But if you're looking for a horse to hit the board and spice up some of your exotics, I think she's going to give a really good account of herself in here.
Yeah, I gave this mare a long look, and I couldn't quite pull the trigger on her ultimately, but she's one that I do want to use somewhere because I think you make some good points about her facing decent company. And I'm also really intrigued by her stretching out to the mile and 5/16 distance because She's run a mile and an eighth on the turf recently, and it just feels like she's a little one-paced in those races, but she's typically finishing well. And you go back to her dirt races, and she was the kind of filly that really got better going longer on the dirt. She actually ran her best dirt races going the 9 furlongs on the main track. And typically, it takes more stamina to go those distances on the dirt than the turf. So I would almost peg her as a horse that should be best going marathon distances on the turf. She finally gets a little closer to that with this trip at Kentucky Downs on Saturday. So I won't be surprised when there's a step forward in her.
Well, on the outside, big long shot Viva La Red does seem like she needs a career best in here. She's 0 for her last 16, and she's going to be stepping up and facing graded stakes company in here. So do you think you can make a case for her to hit the board or have a say in this race?
She's a little tough for me to get to, kind of like Angel Nashiko. She's probably going to be a bigger price going out for the connections that she does, but maybe she's a pace factor in this race because they've gone forward with her a few times, but she's run her best turf races over that Gulfstream Park turf course, and I can't think of two turf courses that are more different than Gulfstream Park and Kentucky Downs, so I'm not sure this is going to be the right spot for her.
Moment of truth time. David, let's take a look at the selections. Where do we wind up? Go ahead, you first. It looks like we've got the same 4, just in a slightly different order.
Yeah, I was kind of having a tough time making up my mind between Greenfinch and Nisi Marie in this race, and I ultimately decided that I thought Nisi Marie was going to be a shorter price than Greenfinch. I know it's opposite on the morning line. I wonder if Nisi Marie is going to go shorter than that 4-1, which is ultimately why I put Greenfinch on top. Just like you said, I think she's a filly that has upside coming into this race. Aidan O'Brien has wanted to run her in the U.S. She was actually entered in the Saratoga Oaks, a race that I think, I forget if it was rescheduled or hard to remember what happened 2 months ago at Saratoga at this point, but did not end up going in that race. I think she was scratched. She'll go in this spot instead against the older horses, but I just think she's all upside. I like some of her recent form, and I expect her to run well on Saturday.
7, 8, 2, 4 for me. Nisi Marie with Greenfinch towards the back. And then in the middle, we talked about the price of Forever After All. That's intriguing. That's one that David and I both have on our tickets. Chop Chop, kind of one of the measuring stick horses for this race. However you end up playing race number 6 on Saturday at Kentucky Downs, we wish you the best of luck. Make sure to subscribe to the DRF YouTube channel.